We're doing a music and community panel discussion, very casual discussion, and we'll get started. So just to start, everyone introduce yourself and say what you do.
All right, I'm Austin Di Pietro, and I am a musician, jazz musician, long-time Windsor jazz community member, I guess. So,
Hello to our captive audience. Hope this is at least somewhat entertaining for you all this afternoon. But I'm going to enjoy getting to rap about issues of music in our community, how we can make things better for everybody. Anyway, my name is Russ Macklem. I am a trumpet player and composer in many different styles, but mainly jazz, working here both in Windsor and residing here in Windsor, and also very active in the Detroit scene also. I think that's enough for me.
Hello, my name is Crissi Cochrane. I'm a musician, singer-songwriter, and the co-founder of a local music label, Soul City Music Co-op.
Thanks. My name is Shane Potvin. I'm the chair of the Ford City BIA. I'm a building owner in the neighborhood. I'm a graphic designer. I own a studio that's upstairs, 2 doors down, and just a huge fan of music and this neighborhood.
Okay, so the first question, rapid fire in like 1 sentence max. Define what community means to you.
Means to you.
I'll start. I think it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but to me, community is just a group of people that have common goals and want the same things. And I don't think it's not much more complicated than that. I think it's just everyone wanting the same thing.
Yep. Yeah, to add to that, I feel like community doesn't have necessarily borders. Like, it can be a local community, it can be national, international, all around the world. It's just people who are like-minded coming together. And usually I feel like there's such a focus on the people and quality of life and betterment in these ways that makes it feel like it's very progressive and grassroots. It's like people over profits, people on the planet over profits tends to be kind of the vibe of most communities.
Maybe we'll give a bit narrower of a definition just to make it fun. In terms of like, say, the jazz community, especially like, in Detroit, it's quite close-knit. It is about meeting of like minds, but also a place where you can go to learn and disagree with each other and have, disparate opinions, but also still try to get along with each other as much as possible.
Yeah, I think I've always thought a community just has a sense of belonging, I guess, just broadly. I think community can be a bunch of different things. And just that sense of belonging, finding your people, and that's kind of what I've always thought of it as.
Great. Okay, so to bounce off of that, what do you think music brings to a community, or how can or does music contribute to a community?
I think music's very participatory in a lot of ways. I think, as musicians, when we're playing shows and whatnot, and just seeing the people bob along and whatnot, and finding your audience and whatnot, and people coming out, I think that has a tendency to build communities. And just historically thinking of a lot of different groups of people around the world and whatnot, music has always had that sense of, I guess, strengthening that community. It's kind of at the core of a lot of different groups.
Sorry, I was paying attention to you, Austin, but I just had to get the question up again because I was already forgetting it. I'll read the question again just for my own sake. What do you think music brings to a community, and how, or does music contribute to a community? mean, maybe I'll start with how it sort of contributes. It's sort of a mirror image in a way. It's sort of like in this community, there is an existent musical culture that, is from our, the lineage of this community and Detroit community. I'm doing mostly talk through my lens of having, spending at least half of my time in Detroit. But I think our musical community in Windsor is very much influenced by the music of Detroit. But it's sort of a mirror of that, and then so taking off of that, lineage of that music and bringing our own flavor of this new generation of, our generation that we're in now, and continuing that lineage, and then reflecting that, knowledge of that, even just a little bit to people of the community, and then they have, then they reflect back at us that they sort of have an understanding of what we're doing, because it's, we're taking from that lineage, producing something that's new based on it, and then that gives the community something at large, something to gives them something. I don't know. I'm done.
It is a loaded question. I think the history and the storytelling, that's a really big part of what music brings to a community. A lot of our musicians are storytellers and keepers of stories and histories, and even something as simple as playing an old jazz standard, brings back to life the circumstances around that song and the writing of it. I think further to that, I think what music brings to a lot of communities is a sense of like a cultural identity, because in Windsor we've got so many different communities from around the world, and each one of them has their own musical style. So I feel like music can be an expression of a cultural identity as well, and a way to bring people together, kind of uniting all these disparate people from throughout the city, and also introducing new people to different communities as well.
What I find really interesting is how music, especially from an outdoor perspective, I guess we're so used to seeing music indoors and going to concerts indoors, and that's usually where music is enjoyed. And, for example, we had our festival dropped on Drouillard a few weeks ago, and there is just something so different about having music down a street, and lots of music down the street. And even today, I was driving down the street and I heard Russ playing at, I don't know what time you started, it was like 11 maybe, or 11:30. But there was I heard it as I was leaving my car, just walking down the street to my wife's store, and you could just hear the trumpet down the street, and there's just something really magical about hearing music like that outside, because we don't, you may be a speaker outside on a patio, but you don't hear that sort of real deep, the carry of like a trumpet. And I think there's something really special about having that in a community, because it does, I think people do hear that and go, wow, that's just something completely out of the norm. So I think more of like an immediate response to music in a community, I think it just ties people together in a really unique way.
Just because you're handing the mic back to me, I want to add something that I saw online lately that I thought kind of fits in with this question too. Someone was saying that if visual art is how we decorate our spaces, then music is how we decorate time. And I thought that feels
That's
like
good,
that,
yeah, like, totally.
Yeah.
So the next question is, can you provide an example or an anecdote of a time when music had a large impact on a community, kind of going off what Shane was saying? It can be locally, internationally, anytime you experience this personally.
I think just in the context of thinking of jazz, on the theme of Jazz on Drouillard, whenever I think of community, I think of like a jazz jam session. Whether here or in Detroit, Russ and I have been to many a jazz jam session in both cities, but in Detroit, it's a very close-knit community, and I think, just thinking from my own there's a bar called Spread Art over in Detroit, and the community of jazz musicians just comes out every week, and it's more of a hangout than anything. So it's community building like that, and also working on your craft, working on being a musician and connecting with people, and I think that's all what it boils down to, is connecting with people at the different jazz jam sessions. So that's kind of my example of that, I guess.
I'm gonna keep reading these questions again, man. Yeah, I think playing off of Austin's example in terms of jam sessions are a very important part of what jazz musicians in particular do, because we're so tied to our lineage of music. In Detroit, it's a very important thing. The few nearly audient members we have, if you're listening to me, I challenge you to go to a jam session in Detroit sometime. It's really something special to behold. And I can tell you a whole bunch right now. You have Cliff Bell's in downtown Detroit on Wednesday nights. That happens every Wednesday. You've got Burt's Marketplace in Eastern Market. That happens Thursday nights. Baker's Keyboard Lounge is basically a jam session, essentially, with the great Ralph Armstrong, and he is the bass player that replaced James Jamerson on Motown Records, and quite a storied career. But he plays there every Friday and Saturday night, and Spread Art on Thursday nights, as Austin was mentioning. So it's kind of an interesting thing to observe at any of those places if you out just about any day of the week. Because of the pandemic, a lot of those had shut down, but there's more and more popping up. But just to observe this kind of strange communal gathering of all these musicians and how everybody basically gets along for the most part, and young musicians are sort of encouraged in their, encouraged and given advice in terms of what they need to do to improve. And it's cool, as a musician, one of my favorite things to see is to go to these jam sessions and see a young musician that comes out and having done this myself, you're scared, where they want to play, everybody sounds so good, you sound so bad, and you get up there and usually people are encouraging, sometimes not, but that's good too. Sometimes you need that tough love, they get up there and they do their best, and maybe they play too long or they mess up the form, and people give them advice, and if they come back, that's a cool thing. And then watching them, if they keep coming back, I've seen this happen so many times, where they keep coming back, and in 2 or 3 years they're a badass, and I love that. But so that's kind of on a small scale. On a larger scale, one musical event certainly that I encourage you all to go to if you haven't, as the Detroit Jazz Festival. That has a huge impact on the community, the musical community, and the community at large in Detroit, because it's a free festival, and it's not it's focused mostly on jazz and black music. You don't have Paul Simon playing there. I like Paul Simon, but not really under the umbrella of jazz so much, but it's completely free for over Labor Day weekend. So if you've never been to that event, I highly, highly encourage you to go. It's an amazing feeling in the city. One of the things that I thought was so amazing, that it was just really felt like this moment of bringing together, was there's a great dearly departed saxophone player in jazz named Wayne Shorter. He just passed away this last year, but his band that had played with him for 20 years, they played a set. It was a trio, piano, bass, and drums. They played a set without him at the festival, of all new music actually, which was kind of, I thought, an interesting move. I was, judge it artistically, it was amazing music, but they played this very challenging music in Campus Martius. Very challenging music in front of a huge audience of at least 25,000 people, and it was silent during the most challenging parts. People weren't even talking, they were all listening, and it was just a wild experience in the city of Detroit. So that's amazing when you have musical moments like that, and when you allow. That's a cool thing about this event here. It's a much smaller scale, obviously, but supplying this music to our local masses, not too many people, but and then makes people stop and think and check it out for a second. So as one of my favorite musicians said, the great Eddie Harris, great saxophone player, it's this music isn't necessarily meant for you to get up and dance and do your thing. It's meant for you to think. And for those of you that don't think too much, I'm just warning you before we lay it on you.
Thank you. So I kind of have two answers to this question, and the first one is Mike and I met Austin through, I'm pretty sure it was through Jeff Wilkinson's Jazz Nights. Is that right? Yeah. And Mike actually credits that as being the reason why we're still in Windsor. Mike, that's how we met everybody. It's how we met all the people that we play with today. And like all of our current circle of friends, we all met at one of Jeff Wilkinson's Jazz Nights. We were actually at a point where we didn't know if we were going to stay in Windsor because I was doing everything online and Mike was just working like a regular job that he could do anywhere sort of thing. We were like, well, why are we still here? We could live anywhere. But then we finally made these connections with these great players and great friends, and that's what kept us here. So that was a big way that like music helped us find a community when we were kind of like in a weird place in time where we were shifting through different projects and friend groups and kind of figuring out like who are our people. So that was awesome to find them that way. And when I first read this question, I was thinking about all the different instances where like music has brought together a community, like a huge festival or a fundraiser or a rally. Like music is such an integral part of these kinds of events. But the one thing that really stands out in my memory in the last few years was back in 2020 during the Black Lives Matter protests when all musicians went silent on social media, some for just a day and some for like a period of days and weeks to kind of give space to other voices to speak out. And I thought that was really powerful. I mean, it's a moment of inaction more than action, but also amplifying other voices that are out there too. But I thought that was impressive because musicians are made to be constantly active with social media. It's like endlessly like update your Spotify pick and make sure all your profiles are relevant and active, and it's so much work to do all of that. So it's pretty amazing when you can have like a movement that actually says don't do that for a little while. Just like chill and take your time and let other people be heard and kind of take a backseat from the self-promotion that unfortunately is such a big part of what we have to do.
I think actually the last week has been a little pretty topical, especially what's happening if you follow social media. What's happening at Fog Lounge right now, and Tom talking about the fate of Fog and whether it's going to be around in a week or whether it's not going to be around. And so I think Fog is a really special place. We're a city that doesn't have a huge music community. We don't have a ton of venues, but I think Fog has sort of filled that place where it's been a lot of things for a lot of people over large areas of time. I think it's the place where people that don't feel comfortable at other places always feel comfortable at Fog. And I think everyone is changing. I think everyone's, I spent a ton of time at Fog and I met you during that time. It's a very special time, and I discovered your music. I discovered Mike's music, and he played at Fog a lot, and I saw Mishu and just all the amazing bands I've seen over the years at Fog during a time that I was very impressionable about music and independent music, and Fog was like, how could you have anything better than that? My musical tastes have changed. I get older, maybe I don't go to Fog as much, I don't go out as much, typically do, but I think watching what has happened in the past couple of weeks and all these reading the comments about Fog and the fate and all these people coming out of the woodwork, and whether it's donating money or whether it's signing a petition, I think it's a really strong, it really shows how strong music is in a community, because it doesn't matter when it is you went to Fog or how often you went or whether you go now, everyone has some special moment. I think my wife met there for the first time ever. We didn't get married or hook up for many years later, but I think everyone has that story, and I think you can't build that sort of fabric in a place. It doesn't exist. It has to happen over time. And that place used to be the Eclectic Cafe, which was a similar sort of space that artists would go and probably had jazz music, and I know Fog does jazz music on Sundays. So for me, I think it kind of Fog epitomizes sort of that what music is and how that ties people together.
All very good answers. How has the relationship of music and a community changed or evolved over the last 5+, no time limit, but let's say pre and post COVID?
I think especially what COVID, I mean, as a musician, and what COVID made me realize was that how important it was to be in front of people and how important it was to be in the same room. I mean, like, building off of what Shane said, I mean, Fog is kind of that institution, that, you know, that gathering place. Music brings us into that place, but it's really important to be in the same room, I guess. Right? I think we learned that as musicians, trying to do the online thing over the pandemic and whatnot was not, it may have worked at first, but then eventually we just got tired, and so tired of that. And I think just being in the same room, having that connection, like Shane said, I mean, the music gives you the in to kind of go up and talk to somebody. You know, the musician kind of lays it out on the line and is kind of lets their guard down for a second, and then it invites other people in, I guess, would be my way of saying that. So I guess the importance of being in the same room.
I got a memory like a goldfish tonight. Perfect moment. Hello, Madeline. How are you today? Would you like to chime in? It's all yours. Next contestant. Okay, never mind. I think that pre and post COVID, I think that right now it feels like we're in a little bit of a fight as a society, and as a, you know, in our place, you know, in this area, North America, you know. Don't worry, I'm not going to say anything weird, but we're in a bit of a fight because.
Brace myself.
Well, it's going to get weird. Don't worry. No, never mind. People got used to staying home. They got used to a certain way of life. Also, things have gotten really expensive suddenly. I'm not going to go into that. Don't worry. But so people got used to, like I said, things are very convenient. The home is a very nice, safe place. But people need to be encouraged to get out of their house, get out and see things, and understand that we only get to do this thing one time, and that's basically for pretty much all musicians these days. Our main source of income is live performance. So it's really important that the community understands the importance of getting out and supporting local live artists and musicians, but also understanding this is going to enrich their lives. I don't know, probably almost everybody here can relate to, it's like going out to a jam session or going to see a friend play or something, and you get a long day and you're sitting there on the couch like, man, this is nice. This is a nice couch. Maybe you're just like, you might even be already dressed to go out, but then you open a beer and like, man, this beer is good. This is nice. And then it's like the Rockford Files. Not that anybody else knows what that is, but he knows. The Rockford Files comes on TV. And you're like, this is great. If I just stay here, it'd be good. But you have to deny that. You have to say no, because this happens to me. It happens to me less because I get used to it. I've gotten used to it more. But you have to push yourself a little bit. And then you go out and they're like, man, you get home like, that was awesome. I'm so glad I went. I had a wonderful experience. I supported my friend. I supported my community. But I got a lot out of it too. Just by, that whole experience, And it's like, oh man, I finally, you could, if you stay at home, you can do nothing. But it's like, oh, I met the love of my life tonight. Like, who knows what happens when you go out and embrace your community in that way. So I think that's the biggest problem. It's just like the audiences are really inconsistent right now, I've found. And that, also translates into my pocketbook, so.
No, I hear you completely. When I was looking at this question, I was like, how am I going to answer this in a positive way? Because, it's my own experience too is like in the last 5 years I became a mom, and so it's really hard for me to get out. So I feel increasingly driven to do things online because that's the arena where I can show up consistently, but it's the least fulfilling arena because it's just like shouting into a vacuum all of the time. and it's such a difficult numbers game online. Everything is based on like your stats, your likes, your subscribers, followers, like all of these numbers that are artificial and that can be bought and, you know, faked. And then algorithms too are controlling what everyone's seeing. It's so hard to just see your own friends when you go online. The deck is so stacked against any kind of a post that comes off as like businessy. So it just feels like the last 5 years have been a big trial of trying to make music online, and it's really, it completely pales to doing anything in person. It's nowhere near as rewarding or meaningful or long lasting, because even if you do something really great online, it's such a flash in the pan. It's like a month later, it may have well been a year or two ago. So I echo what you guys are saying. In person is the most fulfilling and rewarding way to make music and to just exist, like to just be out doing things. You never regret, like, I went down to the river today, I wish I hadn't done that. Like, no one ever says that, you know? It always feels good to get out.
And I'm that guy. I'm that market that, you know, as you get older, and I think, as I mentioned, music becomes, like, when you're impressionable and you're young, it's like, it was literally everything about me was music. I defined myself as an artist, a designer, but also someone who really enjoyed music. And then as life changes and you have other priorities, you know, I've become really involved in this neighborhood. You know, that's a huge passion of mine, and it's a passion that almost supersedes me as a designer, which I never thought could ever possibly happen. So you're battling the changes in the priorities in your life, whether you're a mother or you just don't want to go out tonight because you're watching, you know, the Righteous Gemstones. But I think it is important because you have to check in. I feel very lucky that I live and work. I live 5 minutes away. I walk to work every day, but I'm in this neighborhood a lot, and there's always really unique happening. You know, there's a lot of unique things happening that I feel I just get to witness and be part of, whether it's you playing this morning. You know, there's bands at Pressure Drop often, and so maybe I feel like I make less of an effort to go out because like fog is, to me, it's just like so far away, and it's like you guys are young and you're like, we're there every night. Like, you talk about going to fog every single night, and to me, it's, you get caught in your comfort zone, and I think COVID caused us to even, you know, I was joking, it's like pre-retirement. It's like kind of ushered us into this sort of cozy space where everyone just wants cozy, and you don't wear jeans ever indoors. It's always into your pajamas. But there was a glimmer of hope, and I think during COVID, you know, things like the Gravy Train, you know, that was really special because that was something we were able to witness and enjoy music in a way that, I've never enjoyed music that way, ever. Like, you know, rarely does anyone have someone play in your front yard with your little fire pit. And so I felt that was a special way, you know, to kind of usher in music again, but by no means was that a masses thing that it satisfied everyone's needs, especially musicians, to make money. And so I think I know I'm still in that kind of pre-retirement phase. And I don't know if that's just because I'm 46 years old, and that's just how you are when you're 46 years old. I mean, you probably go out all the time because you play, and that's part of your lifestyle. But when you don't play, I'm like a yin-yang. I have my days are social. My life is very social. But when I go home, it's like I am home, and I don't, you know, you can't call me at 8 o'clock and say, come on out, like, ever, unless I'm around. So I don't know if this really answers the question, but I just think I know that I have to make the effort to engage in experiences that I think are in a live setting, because I think that's important for everyone. It's something that I've always connected with, and I've always loved music, and I love live music. So that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, thanks guys. That's the end.
Wrap up.
No, okay, to wrap up, let's wrap up. 5 words to, in 5 words, or pick 3 words, 5 words, to describe your hopes and wishes for music and community moving forward. It can be more than 5 words. Just 5 words.
Passing it down one. We can start with me. All right.
And on a positive.
I'm gonna try.
I can go with the rest.
All right.
I can go with the rest. I'll just say, I think every time I come down to Ford City here, especially, I see how close-knit this community is, and how, I mean, it kind of gives me a sense of hope every time I come down here, and going to Pressure Drop and this event going on, the Jazz On Drouillard. So I think just more of this happening and more people coming out to this, right? And I think the key is the people realizing the value of what this is. I think we talked a lot about that throughout the discussion was, rather than staying comfy at home, going out and participating in the community that you have, the communities that you have. Right? I think that's key. More than 5 words.
It's okay. There's no wrong answer.
I will not force to be only positive. Sorry. Well, I got a couple of things. Moving forward, like events like this is fantastic. It's a great idea. We don't quite have the economic engine to move as much music over on this side of the river that they do over there. That being said, events like this, figuring out how different organizations and people like myself sometimes can take advantage of grants and things to bring as much music to the community as possible. That's great. So bravo Madeline on making this happen today. Definitely. Let's keep it happening. Let's try and make it bigger every year. Try and make it bigger every year. You know what I'm saying? Get some grants. I'm always willing to help in this kind of thing. So, as I think everybody sitting up here is, we all want to see this be successful and be more successful, more successful, more successful. Also, I think a really important thing from my end of things is to recognize the importance of our brothers and sisters across the river and get them more involved in our community, get our community understanding how important the trade between our two sister cities is and how important historically we are to each other. I think the more that we can highlight that, the stronger everything's going to be, the stronger our communities are going to be, the stronger our music is going to be. We have so much to learn from each other on either side of the border. So the more we can do that, the better. And the other thing is, I'm trying to end on a sort of a comical note maybe. Your relationship, going back to what you were saying, your relationship with, community, musical community at large, now, let me say, first of all, I am not a person to take any kind of relationship advice. Definitely not. Do not ask me. If I start giving relationship advice, ask me to pay you, and we'll be good. But certainly with the musical community, what I think I can say is man, you got to kind of just mark your calendar. Find a couple of things a month. Challenge anybody out there. Find a couple things a month even that you want. It's like having, if you don't keep dating your partner, things go badly. You got to keep doing that. Same thing with your city. You got to keep dating your city. Otherwise, you lose that romantic connection. So that's what I got.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna live with that. I really like that. Yeah.
Cry emoji.
Date your city.
Yeah, that's great. You do. You have to put in the effort.
Yeah. A couple words. Okay, so festivals like this one, amazing. Stumbling upon music, I think that's incredible. The way that enhances your day-to-day experience of a city is huge. Coming from someone who's a part of a co-op, I feel like music and artist collectives are also really cool. I'd love to see more of those happening in the city and more people kind of banding together like that. But my favorite 3 words that I hope become a reality someday, and I would love to do it if I could, would be a Windsor music office. I feel like this is the dream that I've been slowly holding for many years. I feel like it'd be an incredible hub and a resource for musicians that everyone could be a member of and have access to mentorship and help with writing grants and information about venues and rentals and just like a centralized way that we can unite all the musicians in the region. Because out east, where I'm from, every province has its own music industry organization, and for like 20 to 40 bucks a year, you can be a member, and then you have access to all of these people who can help you with your career, all these resources. But there's nothing like that in Ontario. And I think the reason is because of Toronto, because everyone just assumes that like if you need something, you'll go to Toronto. But it's so competitive. Like it's not a substitute for that kind of organization. And Windsor already has so much happening that just Windsor alone could have a great organization. So someday, Windsor Music Office.
Should be on Drouillard, maybe. Yeah, but I think that's what's great about this neighborhood, and I love this neighborhood, is because it's full of kind of those scrappy, artistic, like-minded people that it's just different. It's different than other neighborhoods, and I think that's the one thing that we have to embrace in Ford City and on Drouillard. But I'm also really excited about the city as a whole from a culture perspective, because I think things are changing. I do feel like people are treating Windsor a bit differently, whether it's people that don't have any stigma, Drouillard included, or young people who just want to enjoy their city like they would in any other city. And so I think having festivals like this, seeing the turnout, and really like being part of, we were an organizing, Kaitlyn and I organized Dropped on Drouillard this year, and to witness what happened that day was beyond anything I could have ever imagined, we could have ever imagined. It was an incremental festival every single year. It was something that got better and better every year for the past 7 years. A lot of people were like, what? That happened 7 years, like for the last 7 years? But I think there was, it was always like, oh, that was busier than the year before. And this year was something completely different. And I think Madeline knows, she's played the last couple of years, and Pressure Drop is always involved. But there was this sort of je ne sais quoi that happened that day. It was the music, it was the people, it was the attendance, it was the vendors, it was all these things. And I had so many people come up to me like, shake me by the shoulders, kind of just like, oh my God, like what is happening today? But I think that's more than just a festival here. I think I'm proud as a Windsorite to be in a neighborhood that has something like that, but then to see the turnout. And I think that's what's hard. Windsor has not classically been a city of people who turn out consistently, and something that musicians can say, yes, absolutely, I'm going to have X many bands tonight, or X many people come to my show. Windsor's been flaky that way, I think, in general. And so I think, to me, that's a glimmer of hope that we're heading in the right direction. I think Windsor is growing into be a bigger city. And I think it's these small steps, but it's the artist culture. And I think it's music and art and, all those are what's going to make this a unique city.
I have one more very brief thing to add on what Crissi was saying. So this is an idea I'm throwing out there. So for some of us, for myself, I think for Austin also, being part of the Windsor Musicians Union is actually helpful. Getting the visa, getting advice on working over there. It's not the office that you described, certainly. But when the guard is going to be changing there soon. So when that guard is ready to change, I think I don't know whether, I'm not saying I would be a good person, maybe Austin would be better. I'm not going to name you though. But just the thing to keep an eye out for would be, because the Windsor Musicians Union, unlike other musicians unions around the country, Detroit's actually is not bad, but around Canada actually does things for us a little bit. The P2 visa being a big one, certainly for me. Maybe taking that and bringing it more into usefulness for musicians in the city, and making it a better resource for people. I think there's certainly people there that maybe draw some salary that they don't really do a whole lot, but actually making people do things, help musicians, maybe bringing it into a more vibrant neighborhood like this one would also be a great idea too. So maybe keeping an eye on when Mr. Borchek is ready to retire, maybe we can go up, grab that and say, okay, let's take it.
Thanks everyone. Austin, Russ, Crissi, Shane, thank you so much. Madeline, thank you. and Chance Coffee. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day, everyone.